Hey, what's going on, guys? So, semi recently, Marvel announced a brand new offshoot initiative called Marvel Midnight. This is going to be a horror centric universe that reimagines a lot of Marvel's classic superhero staples through the lens of horror, which I think is potentially really interesting in a weird snake eating its own tail kind of a way, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. However, the creative roster on this and the titles they're starting off with, that's the biggest selling point for me. So first off, you have, in my opinion, the king of contemporary comic book horror, Philip Kennedy Johnson, on Spider-Man, with art by French cartoonist Cetronk. I hope I said that correctly. Whose work I haven't seen outside of Instagram, but I'm excited to see them on a title like this. You also have Fantastic Four by Benjamin Percy and Kev Walker. Now, I know Walker most recently from Johnson's current Hulk series, but he's been at Marvel for a while now, and it just makes sense with his art style to put him in a horror-centric universe like this. Now, Ben Percy is kinda hit or miss for me as a writer, so hopefully this is a hit, but he's got some heavy horror sensibilities in his work, so I hope this plays to his strengths. And finally, Jonathan Hickman returns to the X-Men alongside artist Matteo Delafonte. Now, the former needs no introduction, but Delafonte, I think, is a relatively newcomer to the Marvel Universe. And I think the biggest thing he's drawn was that Nova Centurion miniseries from last year. But what I know him from best is that Bring on the Bad Guys, the Green Goblin one-shot. Because after about 22 years of being a comic book nerd and a lifelong Ultimate Green Goblin truther, this was the comic that made me truly appreciate the original recipe Jeffrey Epstein in a Halloween costume iteration of the Green Goblin. So I'm glad to see him here on something like this. And like I said, really solid creative teams on this whole line, but again, snake eating its own tail. Because rumor has it, this initiative is very much looking at DC's Absolute Universe, which, if true, is painfully hilarious. Because the Absolute Universe, in and of itself, is the latest, and in my opinion, to be fair, the greatest attempt at replicating Marvel's original Ultimate Universe. So seeing these books get announced, especially with the teaser art by Dyke Bruin for Midnight X-Men, kind of just felt like watching a mother give birth to her own grandchild. And just to add an extra layer of irony on top of the creative incest cream pie, if you will, Marvel started as a horror publication. And I think I even brought this up in my last video. Back when Marvel was still Timely Comics, they specialized in three genres: romance, war, and horror. Granted, they had superheroes, but it wasn't their bread and butter like it was for DC. And it didn't really become their focus until about the early 60s when Stan Lee took over the Marvel bullpen. And even then, Marvel's horror roots were very present in those original superhero stories. Now that said, over the past decade and a half or so, really from the first Marvel Now initiative back in 2014 up to now, you can smell that Christopher Reeve Superman the movie inspired MCU brand synergy that's just firmly been embedded within Marvel Comics, to the point where, and I keep saying this and I'm gonna say it until it's no longer true, current era Marvel just doesn't feel like Marvel anymore. It's why I've taken to calling them DC Junior, because that's just what the MCU inspired Marvel Comics universe feels like to me. But within that cultural and creative setting, I'm interested to see how these 60s era Marvel heroes who, again, are already deeply rooted in the horror genre but have since gotten far removed from said origins, I'm interested to see what a contemporary reimagining of those characters and staples look like with a direct approach to horror. And some of the taglines that these books have been advertised with are very interesting to me, like Spider-Man discovers that with great power comes something monstrous. Okay, what does that mean? Is Peter Parker gonna be a superhero in this? Or is he just straight up man-spidering his way through Midtown High Carrie style? Is Peter Parker even gonna be Spider-Man in this universe? I don't know. And the whole thing with Fantastic Four, they venture into the unknown, not to save the world, but to unleash terror upon it. So, the Four from Planetary, but with the actual Fantastic Four this time? Okay. which I don't mean dismissively, by the way, because A, it wouldn't be the first time Marvel ripped off a pastiche that was homaging their characters, but with the actual characters the pastiche is homaging. I mean, that's literally how you get Bendis and Bagley's Ultimate Spider-Man. That comic is literally, hey, what if we took the 90s Milestone Static comics and the 90s made a Parker series and just did that, but like actually with Spider-Man this time? And B, I don't think it's unfair to say that it's the comic that almost single-handedly clawed Marvel Comics out of financial and creative bankruptcy. So, like I said, not being dismissive, I'm just making an observation. However, the X-Men pitch sounds the most far removed from X-Men, where instead of fighting for acceptance, they hunger for blood. Which, I guess the mutants are just vampires in this universe? Or something? I don't know. Again, like this universe as a whole, we're just going to have to wait and see when the books finally drop. And again, I'm very curious to see how this Mobius strip style of influence plays out with these characters. And hopefully, if it's good, Marvel doesn't shoot themselves in the foot by canceling the entire line after readers get attached to it, because that would really suck. And if it does do really well, and this is the shot of B12 that Marvel desperately needed, much like how the absolute DC universe was for DC, and even the original Ultimate Universe was for Marvel back in the day, I'm curious to see where Marvel as a whole goes from there. Because it would be really funny to see Marvel return to those horror roots by way of an offshoot horror universe. Because, and I feel like this isn't talked about enough, you saw something similar in the way that the 616 comics started bringing back some of those spy thriller espionage vibes in the wake of the Ultimate Universe, basically operating like Bush-era Marvel Gear Solid, and you started to see in real time how the Ultimate Universe was rubbing off on the 616 universe. So, who knows? We'll see. But those are just my thoughts. But what about you? Are you excited for Marvel Midnight? Let me know down below in the comment section, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.